One doesn't just go into Assembly Hall and get a 17-point win, but number 18 Illinois put together its most impressive half of the season, outscoring Indiana 40-21 in the second half. They notch a statement 74-57 win at Indiana. Welcome into the Illini Inquirer podcast. Jeremy Werner at home, Joey Wagner, Derek Piper were at Assembly Hall. I think the best venue in the Big Ten when it comes to atmosphere. I'll ask those guys about that. But guys, that is now 3 quad one wins during the last 2 weeks for this team. That's 4 straight wins for the Illini. They're now 2 wins ahead of Michigan State and Wisconsin in the Big Ten standings. Assuming Purdue holds on to beat Michigan, they're up 6 at halftime as we record this. There'll be a game ahead of Purdue going to what will probably be the Big Ten game of the year in West Lafayette on Tuesday. But before we get ahead of that, let's break down the Illini's biggest win. We'll start with you, Derek. A dominant second half. First half wasn't very clean. Offensively, they really struggled. And defensively, they weren't as locked in. A lot of fouls in there. But what's your big takeaway from this one?
Make it 13 out of the last 15 Big Ten road games. I mean, it's pretty amazing in an environment like this, which Joey and I have been talking about is not – they haven't had – well, they've gone on the road and gotten some wins at Iowa, and I guess they didn't at Maryland, but this was a amped up crowd with a lot to play for Indiana, where they could have been 8-4 in the league and 1 game behind Illinois had they gotten this done. So for Illinois to withstand some of those moments of roaring crowd and Indiana leading for much of the first half, to be able to stay poised and come out in the second half and put on a defensive clinic and make Indiana by limiting Trace Jackson Davis, try to get their other supplementing pieces to force them to beat you, and they didn't because they struggled to make shots, and that's kind of been the story for Indiana for a while now. But Kofi really clicked into place after starting 1 for 5 and ultimately dominated down the stretch and got the best of Trace Jackson Davis, so that was huge. Trent Frazier's shots were enormous. It felt like even in the first half he had a response where it could have been in Indiana, maybe it was a 5-0 run, keeping it from going 10-0 or something really insurmountable or really a deep hole. He would make a shot to make sure that didn't happen. So great win, big win. And to the point about the quad ones, I mean, this is really, really important into elevating back into the top 4, top 3 seed in the NCAA tournament, because there was a point in time where Iowa was your only quad 1 win and you had more quad 2 losses than you did quad 1 wins. That is no longer the case, and you just keep building this thing up.
Yeah, Joey, after they lost to Purdue and Maryland, you're without Kofi going to the Michigan State game. You find a way to win that game. You find a way to win Northwestern, but these last 2, this has looked like the top 10 team, the Big Ten title team that some of us thought they were early on in the preseason.
Yeah, and they've still done it more or less without Andre Curbelo. Like, he's available, but he's not getting the usage that I think we would have all said we thought he'd be getting on February 5th if we would have been asked in November. And like, he was impactful tonight, I thought, but it just wasn't what we thought it was going to be. So you can still see a step to grow a little bit. And I think that's, if you're looking at this as, a fan, though, that's a really encouraging thing, right? There's still another level to get to, but this was, like Derek said, this was a pretty loud environment. I mean, there were lines of kids as we're waiting to get in as we're walking up, and it's been probably since 2019, and really I thought a key stretch there in the first half was Curbelo gets tripped. It's not called. Goody has a flagrant, which was a flagrant, and Indiana goes on a 6-0 run, and you think, oh man, like, that's in this atmosphere, that could have been big. And Illinois kind of clawed a little bit to make that not the case, and it was just frankly a bad first half. I mean, Trace Jackson Davis didn't play for 15 minutes of it, and Illinois was trailing, I think, at halftime. That should not have been the case. And I just think I learned a little bit about, I mean, we knew this was, like Brad saying, is being tough and this whole deal that he preaches every time he talks. But, I mean, I think you saw it today, right? They responded in the second half in a way that I don't know that we've seen that kind of full-fisted punch of a response out of them this year.
Yeah, the other thing, I think they responded in little moments in the first half, Derek. Trent Frazier didn't score, I think, for the first 12 minutes of this game, 13 minutes of this game. And then he scores 9 points in the final 7-8 minutes of the first half. Alfonso Plummer just had some big buckets, get to the free throw line on these step backs. I thought those were massive just to keep Illinois within distance. And, beginning of the first half kind of felt the same way. It's like, man, if Illinois just makes these open shots they're getting, all of a sudden it'll blow open. And then Jacob Grandison hits those couple threes and Illinois just got confident, started making shots. I felt like Illinois was getting the shots they wanted for most of this game, but Kofi or Curbelo missed them around the rim. Grandison, Plummer. Plummer missed back-to-back wide open threes in the same possession, but they stuck with it. They didn't freak out. I thought they were out tough the first 5-6 minutes of the game. Indiana's defense, which is very good, really impacted them. But they always had these little responses, and then all of a sudden, once shots were made, they were rolling.
Yeah, they definitely did. You saw the DeMonte step back three that was early on. That was one of those where Indiana had a couple of baskets, then he hits that shot. And you mentioned Plummer having a few of those. Goody knocked down an open three that was good. And then, early second half, they missed their first 6 threes, and that worried you a little bit. But once they were able to start getting it going, I know Alfonso Plummer told us afterwards, Joey asked the question of, when did you know that you were going to really break through and break away in the second half? And he's like, well, when Trent starts getting hot, knew couldn't stop him, and then DeMonte makes one, Grandison makes 2, I make 1, and they're really hard to guard when they're able to knock down shots like that. And for Kofi to play the second half that he did, but it was a little worrisome where it's kind of that odd dynamic. And I know we saw it in those watching against Purdue when they played here and put Trace Jackson Davis on the bench with 2 fouls, and somehow Indiana got hot and sped ahead and took a lead. And kind of the same thing was happening. It's like, wait, this guy is out. You should be able to make them pay for that. And Illinois wasn't able to for a little while there. And credit to Durr for being physical with Kofi, and he wasn't handling it the best for a little stretch there. But yeah, to stay within range. Brad said he was thrilled to only be down 2 and at halftime, and a big credit to some of those guys by making those timely shots.
There's not much more we can say about Trent Frazier. And once he gets on a heater, Joey, he can just carry this team. But you wrote, well-timed, by the way, about Illinois' defense taking a big step forward. And listen, Derek said it, Indiana's offense is not very good. Like that is a thing that is holding them back. Their guards aren't very good offensively. Xavier Johnson got a couple things, but Illinois' defense ratcheted up in the second half. There was a 10-minute stretch where Indiana made 2 of 13 shots, barely scored during that stretch. This is why they were able to win on the road. I think it's as simple as playing defense. Defense travels, as Brad Underwood said. And when you get stops, you can make a 21-5 run.
Yeah, first of all, the piece wasn't the most well-timed in the first half. They weren't very good in the first half. And I at one point I thought, oh, man, I got to scrub the internet clean. That's not going to age very well here. They fouled. They fouled a lot in that first half, and it got to really kind of be an unwatchable game a little bit there. There was just tons and tons of fouling, and there wasn't a lot of flow.
And I will say this, Joey, I thought the first half they forced some tough shots, but they either fouled on them or Indiana made some tough twos, like Galloway with the runners. So I still thought they were playing decent defense, but the fouling was certainly the issue.
The fouling probably kept Indiana in it. And again, it's still very weird to say that when Trace Jackson Davis didn't play effectively the whole first half. But DeMonte Williams, man, you always hear, like, I know Brad has said it all the time, is he guards people bigger than him, but Race Thompson's a large individual, and he's a really good basketball player. He's a really, really good basketball player who plays really hard. And there's no time that DeMonte could have taken off while guarding him, because Race would makes everybody pay for it if you have any laps. And I just thought his work in the paint, because Indiana tried to exploit that size matchup. They tried to go in there, and DeMonte held firm, and then Kofi maybe even fed off that a little bit, and he really limited Trace Jackson Davis in the second half. And like, that's the defense I think that Brad gets giddy over when he sees that, is they're just imposing their will effectively, and it sparked the whole run, and they didn't turn the ball over as frequently there. And that was as good a half of a defense. Michigan State was pretty good too, but in the second half, Indiana had 0.677 points per possession, and maybe that's a lot of numbers that don't mean a lot, but that's not very good.
No, that means a lot. You're not going to win many games with 0.67 during a second half. Illinois might have been close to that in the second half of Michigan State, but they found a way to win. Derek, I do want to throw a lot of praise to Kofi Cockburn. 10 points over the last 10 minutes of this game. Trace Jackson Davis, I'm sure the Indiana fans got to be sitting there going like, hey, if you're a big time player, and this is my issue with him being called Big Ten Player of the Year sometimes. I think he's a great player, phenomenal player. I think he'd be a great number 2 on a championship caliber team, but you can't have your best player have 6.6 rebounds, get a bad second foul on Alfonso Plummer. But Kofi was a big part of it in the second half. I want to give Omar Payne a shout out, forced Jackson Davis into 2 bad turnovers in the second half. But Kofi, bad first half, but he responded, man. I think that's huge. 17 points, 8 rebounds. It felt like Jackson Davis was kind of impacted by the first half. Kofi Cockburn wasn't.
Yeah, it was a great response by Kofi, obviously in a big time matchup. And Trace, while he doesn't have the same type of strength and physicality to be able to hold his ground for the most part against Kofi, but he has the length to be able to challenge some shots. But really, you saw the way that Kofi was able to bother him with his offensive game. And there was one move where Trace kind of jab stepped him and was pulling him away from the paint a little bit and got by. But outside of that, when he was trying to play bully ball or just traditional back you down mode, Trace was uncomfortable and ended up, taking some shots where he would just fall on the floor, and it showed that he doesn't have the type of strength to be able to withstand that. And that's been one of the knocks. And you said it there, when he's played some of the more physical, imposing front courts in the Big Ten, he's had some struggles at those kind of moments. And really just Kofi's been a rung above in terms of consistency. So Kofi bothered him. The physicality certainly wore on Trace as the game went on, and he wasn't able to click into place in that second half. Kofi was, and that's why his team was able to run away with the victory.
We talk about this team's depth a lot, guys. Not a lot of minutes for these guys in the second half, but why would you? I mean, Frazier, Grandison, Plummer, Williams, Cockburn, all a plus 15 or better in this game. So when you're making that run, it's all of them on the court. I do think Curbelo, and didn't score a lot, was 1 of 4 from the field, but he gave them, at least in the first half, a guy who could break down the defense, Joey. But 12 minutes in back-to-back games. Let me know what you think about him and how Brad Underwood, I don't know if he was asked about it after the game, like how they're kind of bringing him along, but I thought RJ Melendez gave some solid minutes, a couple bad turnovers for him, but I thought he was active. There were plus 8 on the court with him in there. Goody hit a 3. Omar Payne gave some solid minutes. Coleman Hawkins a little iffy again, but what do you think about how Brad Underwood is using his depth right now, Joey?
I think we saw a lot of it in the first half, and another game in the second half, you ride with who got you there, right? But in the first half, Goody's in foul trouble, Grandison's in foul trouble. Coleman I thought he had a couple bursts on defense specifically. Then RJ Melendez comes in, and there was a time 2 weeks ago, where it's like, oh boy, what do they do? Because we haven't seen it. We haven't seen it happen in a game. And slowly that's starting to happen. Brad was not, after the presser, asked about how they're working in Andre Curbelo, but it's clearly a slow process. And I wonder how much of that is just physically, conditioning wise, getting him up to speed. You'll remember what's today, Saturday? So we would talk to Brad yesterday. He said that Andre ran like crazy on Thursday. They had him running just to get him there. But I also think some of it is, and this is working right now. Like, that's the thing. And Frazier and Plummer, and that dynamic is working. And you would think, unless Brad went really, really small in his lineup by taking out one of DeMonte Williams or Jacob Grandison, you would think it's got to be one of those two guys. And it's like, how can you as seamlessly as possible work a really high usage player? And his high usage, that it's deserved, because he does things. He got to the rim like in ways that other players on this team just can't do. So how do you integrate him back into this lineup without disrupting what really got you here? And dude, things are clicking right now. So like, this isn't like you're 1 or 2 and 4, 2 and 3 in your last 5 games. You're rolling right now, and you have to bring him back in, but it's not as easy as just saying, okay, kid, go, because there's a lot of other pieces that move.
I agree with you, Joe. I think it's, how do you take Trent Frazier out right now? Right. Like, and the good thing is, Curbelo can give Frazier like 3-minute bursts on the bench, right? Like, and you feel like you can hang, and Curbelo's a -1 today. So that's a good backup point guard there. But Derek, I love that Curbelo doesn't seem to be pouting. I thought Michael Tuitt made a great point. Like, a lot of guys in his situation, first team All-American, would be pouting all that. He seems to be, on the bench, cheering for his teammates, excited about winning games. So I give him a ton of credit, but I like how Brad's playing this right now. Like Trent Frazier is got us here. This is his team, but Curbelo can give us these bursts. And at some point, whether it's, Tuesday at West Lafayette or, they struggle in a game against a team they should win, Andre Curbelo can give you a boost if you need it.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that was a huge key as we're trying to figure out when ultimately Curbelo's back and what buttons Brad's going to push and how he's going to integrate him and what's kind of his philosophy of, are you going to start him? I mean, you're not going to do that right away, but the end game of does the offense revolve around him all of a sudden for a team that had figured a lot of things out and had gotten into a nice flow in the season that Trent's having and being able to make plays with the ball in his hands. So him not rushing that, him being able to be adaptable and kind of feel out the game and understand that Trent's going well and that Plummer had done some things and he felt good about that lineup combination. And he didn't worry about needing to have Curbelo out there. And that says a lot about the season that Trent's having and to be able to morph into that pure PG really and be able to play that spot for a guy that had to be thinking once again, Io's had the ball in his hands a bunch last year and throughout that 3-year run at Illinois, and now it was going to be Curbelo's chance and everything was going to revolve around him. For Trent to be able to be playing like he's playing, that's been impressive. And also, like you said, I mean, there's something to be said for a guy like Andre Curbelo, where there are some other players on this team that maybe would pout a little bit more when they're not getting the tick that they want. And really just in general, you know that he's got to be dying more than anything to get back on that court for what he's gone through and to be team first and to be showing outwardly that he's all about wins and all about his teammates is really important. And it goes back to why Brad talks so much about culture.
I do want to make one more reference to another point. I mean, Demonte Williams, we mentioned him with, Race Thompson, 3 blocks tonight was huge. I think everyone that was on the takeaway Demonte Williams minutes is understanding why that wasn't the case. But Jacob Grandison the last 2 games, guys, only 6 points tonight, but 6 biggest points, it felt like, of the game, turning that thing around. But also 4 assists in his last 3 games, had some bad turnovers early in this one, but was good in the second half. And over the last 3 games, 17 rebounds. Joey, that's what he showed some physicality. Michael Tuip tweeted out there was one where he put a body on Trace Jackson Davis where he was getting ready to slam dunk a putback. Grandison's making some nice contributions here lately.
Yeah, Brad Underwood said he does not like when Jacob Grandison is not on the floor. And if you've listened to Brad Underwood talk for 4 years, you understand that is, or 5 years, I guess, that is a pretty significant statement coming from him. And I know it's like an easy thing to see and talk about that he's always this cool guy, but he gets really cool when those shots go in and he starts doing a lot of other things at a higher level. He had 4 assists tonight. He had 4 rebounds tonight. That's pretty good given he didn't play a lot in the first half either because he was in early foul trouble. And I think the thing that stands out about his game today was he just wasn't very good for 3 minutes to start this game. He had a couple bad fouls. He had the turnover. And I looked at Derek, I'm like, oh boy, like, was that a one-off kind of deal at Wisconsin? And I say that knowing what he's done all year. I just mean one-off in this particular stretch of basketball. And he came back and he really turned it up. And those threes, Mike Woodson said after the game, like, that was kind of it. Like, those were the ones. I know Trent got, burning fire at, in the game in the second half, but those threes really just started an avalanche and it kind of made sense. One of them gave the lead. The first one he hit gave the lead and the second one extended it. And it just felt like getting that lead finally was a huge deal because they'd gotten close and they never got it. And it was kind of fitting that he was the guy to step up and hit a 3 at a huge time. And I didn't think he forced it either. He only took 4 shots. He wasn't trying to shoot himself out of anything. I thought he just played within the game and it's huge.
All right, Derek, I want to point this question at you. I think they've had their 3 most impressive wins over the last 2 weeks, right? Like this team is building steam just like Brad Underwood teams do the last 2 years here at Illinois. How would you rank them most impressive? Indiana on the road, Wisconsin at home, Michigan State at home without Kofi Cockburn and Andre Curbelo. How would you rank those wins in terms of how big they are for this team?
I think you got to go first with the Michigan State win, to win without your big fella, to win without under Curbelo, and Michigan State at the time was top 10 in the country, and you were coming off of the Maryland loss and it lost to, was it Purdue before that? Weren't you at risk of losing 3 straight games going into that one?
Yeah, that would have been the 3rd straight loss. I agree with you. I'd put that number 1 because I don't know if they beat Northwestern if they don't find a way to beat Michigan State.
Right. So I would have to put that one first. I know ultimately road wins are qualified more in terms of you look at the net rankings and everything like that. So this one, I guess I would put this one too, because I know you would look at Johnny Davis in Wisconsin. You were co-leaders at the time, but I just think that going into a building where Indiana had lost once all year, giving the weight to winning on the road. And I think that we talked about it after the Northwestern game, is if you were able to win 2 or 3 of that next stretch. I know Wisconsin's part of that and part of this question, but I think that really to get this one right before Purdue is a big deal, and allows you to go in there with a little less pressure and a lot of opportunity to really take a commanding lead. So I would go Michigan State first, this one, and then Wisconsin third.
You agree with that, Joey?
Yeah, I agree. Indiana lost 1 game here this year, now 2. This isn't an easy place. Like, I don't know if it showed up on TV, but this was a hard atmosphere to win, and especially not looking ahead to a rematch against Purdue, and I thought they were within themselves, and this is the one. This is number 2 for me. Michigan State still is kind of mind-boggling, to be honest with you. And Wisconsin, that's fine. That's a good win. And isn't that crazy? We're saying that. Like,
I thought Wisconsin. I thought Wisconsin was the most impressive win start to finish, right? Like I just thought they played like a Big Ten title team at home. But I would agree with Derek in that, like, getting it on the road at Indiana kind of solidifies you as that, and just beating Michigan State without those guys, like that might be the reason you win a Big Ten title. Like you shouldn't have won that game, like for many reasons, right? Kofi and Curbelo are out. Also, you didn't score in the last 6 minutes. Like you shouldn't have won that game, but you found a way to do it. And that's why I do think it's number 1 on that list.
If anyone's struggling to put in perspective of where this team is, we're just kind of ho-humming a little bit a win against Wisconsin at home. Like, I understand it's a big win, but like
I called it the win of the year the other day. So,
well, I just
that's what this stretch has been, though, right? Like this is I mean, this is Big Ten championship run kind of stuff. And now, guys, hello, Big Ten game of the year. Purdue right now up 7 in the second half. Michigan is fighting, man, and Hunter Dickinson. I know this audience does not like him. He's playing at a Big Ten first team level. If his team won more games, but he doesn't have much around him. So he's trying to keep Michigan in that thing. But I think we know these are the 2 best teams, right? Like Wisconsin, Ohio State, Michigan State. I think they're very good teams, capable of winning a share of the Big Ten title. But I think talent-wise, what we've seen so far this year, Purdue and Illinois look like the 2 best Big Ten teams. And it was an epic game here in Champaign. Derek, what are you expecting of West Lafayette on Tuesday?
Oh, man. Another just big time environment. I would be interested to see if Illinois is going to be ranked top 10 in the country. Not that it's going to matter all that much, because if you take care of business, this whole thing will sort itself out, but another chance for a quad one win. But when you think about ESPN, APM, all eyes nationally on that game, and really a great chance for Illinois to, as I said, take a real commanding lead. I know that ultimately, we'll see what Michigan State does here or Wisconsin, and you're not going to have like some insurmountable type of advantage, but to give another loss to Purdue, who I would fully agree with you. I think that Purdue is the second, or those are the 2 teams that are the best in the Big Ten. And Kofi's response against Edey is going to be fascinating, because I think he's going to have to do better than he did in the first half in terms of playing through physicality. And it'd be interesting to see how that game is called ultimately. And interesting if we get a Bo Borowski game or not. But and I think that it's a great challenge for Trent Frazier, who is nicknamed Off Night for his defensive prowess. I think the one guy you could circle who didn't have one is Sasha Stefanovic in Champaign. So being able to give a better effort there, but it's going to be a high level basketball game. 2 teams that are Final Four capable of winning the Big Ten, and this is a game you're going to look back on really, and it could be the decider ultimately. It ultimately could, especially if Illinois with a lead still is able to get that win and win this all three of this humongous stretch to start off February.
Yeah, Mackey and Assembly Hall are my two favorite places to go watch a road game in the Big Ten. So this one will be taken up another notch because it's a more talented team, definitely offensively. Joey, we came into this saying, hey, win 2 of 3 here and you feel great. Maybe we undersold them, man. Just go win them all.
Yeah, that's easy to do at Mackey, which will surely be boozy at 8:00 on a Tuesday for a top 10 game. But again, I know we talked about this after the Wisconsin game, but it did feel a little bit like a missed opportunity. The Purdue first swing and then Maryland, you can get all that back right now. And that is a testament to picking it back up after a crummy loss at Maryland. And you put this thing back together and figured it out. And it's crazy that this opportunity is presenting itself again in a league that has teams like Purdue, like Michigan State, like Wisconsin, that you can go trip up in a pretty significant way in Maryland and still walk into Mackey with a chance to really plant an orange flag right in the middle of the floor and right in the heart of the Big Ten title race.
Yeah, if they win that game, Derek, I really struggle to see how Illinois doesn't win the Big Ten championship, or at least a share of it. Like crazy things can happen, right? But you beat Purdue, all of a sudden you're home against Northwestern. You got to win that game. You're on the road at Rutgers. I know the rack, or Jersey Mikes as they call it now. They can be difficult there. Purdue knows that. But I struggle to see this team losing 5 Big Ten games. Like I would struggle to see them losing 3 of their last 7 games. And I think if you have 5 or fewer losses, I think you're winning a share of the Big Ten.
Yeah, 100% with you. Without completely tripping up there later on in February, where I know you go to Michigan, you go to Michigan State. You mentioned there at the rack won't necessarily be easy, but when you really eye what we're viewing as the top 2 teams, Michigan State's not as trustworthy. I mean, they're playing at Rutgers today. I'm not saying they're necessarily going to lose, but it's a team that offensively has some limitations. We saw that play out in Champaign, and I think that they will be more susceptible to taking a loss they shouldn't, or just maybe losing a big game to keep them at the top of this chase. And the same thing really goes for Wisconsin when you rely so heavily on Johnny Davis and Davison and Wall and the supporting cast beyond that. I know that we've talked repeatedly about their more favorable stretch down the last month or so here in the Big Ten title chase, but to put another loss on Purdue to create that separation, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't be putting a banner up when it's all said and done if you're able to get that win.
Good, huge win for Illinois. We'll see how if they can put another one up. I mean, guys, it's pretty amazing what this team does in February and March, like mid-January through March, at least into the postseason. Brad Underwood's teams. What do you credit that to, Joey? Like, why is this team under this coach able to make these kinds of runs? If even if they lose against Purdue and still win like the next 3, that's a heck of a stretch.
Yeah, I just don't think he lets things rattle them. I think he's such a, like, it might sound weird to say because I know on the sidelines he goes absolutely nuts at least once or twice a game. But I think he's quick at turning the page himself, and I think that carries down. And in stretches like this, like it's easy where you could let it kind of pile up and spiral and get there. And I also think he really works them in the off season, and he works them in this early part of the season. And like, yeah, this is tough, but Brad, I just think he sets a tone. I think his tone is really good. I think especially the last 2 years, they've had really good and loud and prominent and correct voices at the top of the player chain in the locker room. And that comes from him. That's an extension of him. And I just don't think they get phased. I don't think they get rattled. I don't think they care. I don't think they care about the things surrounding them. And I know that sounds cliche, and I don't mean like any social media or anything like that. I just don't think they care if people are, like Kofi said, standing up and booing him and telling him he's the worst basketball player and he's overrated. I just don't think they care. I literally don't think they care because I don't think Brad cares.
Well, we know DeMonte don't care because he's from Peoria, apparently.
That's word on the street. That's what I've heard is DeMonte does not care.
And I think the other part is just an old team. We talked about the beginning of the year. 23 and 24-year-olds. I think Kofi's the young guy of the starters, right? He's a junior All-American. That pays off a lot too. Well, Derek, Joey, thanks for joining us. Get home and gear up for another huge trip in the Big Ten. Appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, we got to go get food. Brad said we got to try some salad here in Bloomington.
No
so we're gonna
salad
grab
be
some
eaten, man.
How did you take that, Joey? Because Brad thinned out last year. I'm going to say he put some muscle back on.
How did I take that? About as well as you can suspect that I took that. I don't care. I actually asked him today. I said, you must be back on Twitter, huh? And he said he opened Twitter, saw that, and told somebody, said, can I send this? And he'd go for it. So off it was, the roast of Illinois media.
Got you on salad, bros. Come on. All right, boys. Thank you.
Later, man.